Welcome, Gannon family, and thank you for joining us for tonight's presentation with Brandon Wiley and Allie Eagle as they share tips and advice on how to maintain your mental health in the fight for social justice. Tonight's event will be moderated by current Black Student Union President Jade Hammerer. We are also recording this event for those who can't make it. So if you have any questions for Brandon or Allie this evening, please feel free to submit them in the chat. And before we get started, Becky Perry, Director of the Center for Social Concerns and Global Exploration, will be leading us in a prayer. Becky.
Thanks, Allison. So this prayer is written by Father Ken Untener and often attributed to Oscar Romero. And it's titled A Future Not Our Own. So I just ask that you center yourself however you feel comfortable as I read through this prayer. It helps us now and then to step back and take a long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is another way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes the church's mission. No set of goals and objectives include everything. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water the seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces efforts far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing this. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future not our own. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Becky. Gannon University's College for Education, Humanities, and Social Sciences, also known as CHESS, has been focusing on social justice as their speaker series this fall. I'd like to welcome Dr. Lori Lindley, Dean of CHESS, to give you a little more information about the series. Lori.
Thank you, Allison. Every year, CHESS offers a speaker series centered around a theme that's chosen by a committee of faculty, staff, and students. And this year, with the events that have been occurring in our country during the spring and summer months, and over just the recent attention to issues of racial justice and the importance of tackling these issues in our nation, the committee felt strongly that racial justice should be the theme this year. And so we chose a title, Racial Justice, Be the Change, to encourage all members of our community to be involved and to speak up. We've had 4 events so far that have included local, national, and international speakers. And of course, given our current circumstances with COVID-19, we really had to rethink our format. Most of our events are, well, they're virtual, even though they might have a small student audience in the classroom. And one of the interesting results of that is that we've actually been able to reach a much larger audience than usual. Some of our events have had now over 600 views. They're available for members of the community, alumni, and other interested individuals to view on Zoom, but also are live streamed on Facebook. Next week, we have 2 more events coming up. On October 8th, we have Dr. Jason Williams from Montclair State University and Dr. Vivian Salahana from UMass Dartmouth, and they will be talking about the current issues with policing in our nation in the context of the history of race in the US and how that impacts these current issues. So That's going to be a great presentation. And then on October 9th, we have distinguished poet Allison Joseph from Southern Illinois University. She'll be our poet at the Gannon Writing Awards, and her poetry is informed by her experiences as an African-American woman and emphasizes the themes of race and gender. So we're really looking forward to having her visit. All of our events are free and open to the public via Zoom. So we hope that you'll join us and look for information about those. So thank you, Allison. I'm really looking forward to this event tonight. I know Brandon and Allie's work, and I know them personally, and this is going to be a great event. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori. All righty, so now I'd like to welcome Mr. Jim Ahern, class of 1961 and National Alumni Board Director. Jim typically returns to campus every homecoming and meets with Dr. Baker's social work class as a guest speaker. While we're sad that Jim isn't meeting in person with us this year, we are very honored to have him here with us this evening. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you so much, Allison. And it's with great pleasure that I introduce to you one of our guest presenters, Brandon Wiley. Brandon's a 210 graduate in the psychology program, and he received his Master's of Clinical Mental Health Counseling in 2013, also at Gannon. In 2014, Brandon founded Open Eyes as a result of his own personal experience of dealing with racial discrimination and identity crisis. Open Eyes is a nonprofit organization designed to help others create a positive identity founded on a holistic diversity perspective. Brandon truly believes in his mission and is an advocate for social justice. I had a wonderful chat with Brandon today, and we became friends over the phone. He's bright, he's courageous, he's passionate, and he's a very committed man who shines his bright light every day to bring hope to our troubled world. Brandon's a tremendous example of a Gannon alum in action. So thank you for Brandon for joining us this evening as we navigate through maintaining our mental health and fighting for such important topics like social justice. Now I'd like to welcome the current Black Student Union President, Jade Hammerer, to welcome our other presenter, and thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you all for joining us tonight. I'd like to introduce you to Gannon staff. Am I on the right one? Sorry. To Gannon staff, therapist in the Counseling Center, Allie Eagle. Allie is an alumni of Gannon and is involved with many different organizations around campus, such as Active Minds, Inspire Hope, and Silence Packing. She is passionate about raising awareness surrounding suicide prevention, mental health, and social justice in our nation. Allie and Brandon, you now have the floor.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for just having the opportunity to come and just talk about a very important topic. And of course, my alma mater is Gannon, and I love Gannon. It provided me with so much, and just about finding myself and developing to the person that I've developed to be. So I'm thankful to be here. I just want to throw that out there and thank everybody for having me. We are super excited to talk about this topic on so many different levels. Mental health and social justice, which are big parts of my life. And as we can see here, I want you to look at the visual. We have this iceberg, right? And so we see what's on the surface, we see what's above the water, but we don't realize everything that lies beneath. And in regards to social justice, in regards to maintaining your mental health, there's a lot of layers to this. It goes deep. And we really need to explore that as much as we possibly can. And being in this field and in this, and in fighting for social justice, we have to remember to maintain that healthy balance that we all need in our everyday life. So I am excited to be a part of this and to kick this off. And as I want to get started here and talk a little bit more about myself real quickly. As was stated, I'm the founder and executive director of an organization called Opened Eyes. And it focuses a lot on, diversity awareness, self-development purposes, ways to maintain and understand who we are as individuals, as well as the world around us. So this organization is very multifaceted. And I'm also a licensed professional counselor, and I work at the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. And I've been doing that for about 4 years now. So again, I'm very excited to be here to present this information to you. Ali?
Brandon, thank you. Happy homecoming to our Gannon family. I apologize, my lights went out in my office because they are motion. So I hope you guys can see me okay. But we wanted to wish you a happy homecoming weekend. We're so excited to be with you today to have such an important conversation as a homecoming event. And like it's been mentioned, I am a very proud Gannon alumni of the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program, along with Brandon. I'm currently enrolled in the doctorate program of the Organizational Learning and Leadership Program. And Brandon and I are both licensed professional counselors practicing in Erie, Pennsylvania. And among all of our similarities, we also have such beautiful differences. We want to advocate for social justice and racial injustice and you name it. But Brandon and I represent different races, different genders, and we want to come together here today to have a conversation to create change. So let's get started. Today's event, we just want to give you a couple gentle reminders. We want your voice to be heard, and we want everybody to be able to speak their minds. So please, please, please be respectful to everyone, show kindness to each other, give everybody the opportunity to speak and have others' opinions be heard. We will try our very best to get to all the questions that are asked here today, but Brandon and I will offer our email addresses that you can shoot us an email directly so we can talk to you about any questions that you may have. But we want this to be a space where you're practicing and creating healthy dialogue. So this is an opportunity for you to share your voice and share your opinion, ask us questions. We'll do our very best to answer them. And first and foremost, we'd love for you to think about and maybe even toss in the chat if you feel comfortable what your definition of social justice is. Because this is a topic that we're going to talk about here tonight, but everybody's definition can be very different. And we wanted to just remind you that tonight we were going to have answer any questions regarding the mental health aspect of fighting and advocating for social justice. And so feel free to ask any questions, answer, and we will do our best to answer. So let's get started. We wanted to offer you the lens of trauma-informed care to present the information that we're going to share with you here today. And trauma-informed care really encompasses the difference between shifting the question from what is wrong with you to what has happened to you. This takes a lens of when you're having these conversations and these difficult dialogues with your friends, your families, your colleagues, you name it. Be mindful that there's two sides to every single story whenever you're having these conversations. And maybe shifting your thought process from immediately going to, oh my goodness, like what is wrong with you? How could you possibly have that opinion? To, hey, could you just explain to me a little bit more about what has happened to you and what has led you to having that opinion, to help foster a safe space for you to have a conversation. And so the information we're going to provide to you today is from the Sanctuary Model from Dr. Sandra Bloom. So if you wanted to take a look and dive into any more information about the Sanctuary Model, it really encompasses a place where to create a sanctuary, to have safety, to have conversation, and to share your opinions openly and honestly with one another. And we're going to use this SELF model, which stands for safety, emotion, loss, and future, where we can work together to identify and process trauma and then move forward to create radical change. So we're going to dive right into safety. First and foremost, it's of utmost importance that you create a safe space. You need to create safe space for these dialogues and these conversations to happen. And not only physically, but we want you to be psychologically, socially, and morally safe as well. Nonviolence is absolutely essential when you're having conversations like this and fighting for social justice and advocacy for racial justice as well. And we want to encourage you to take some time to really develop relationships with one another, to show respect, to build trust, and to create a space where people can be vulnerable and share their thoughts and opinions openly without judgment. Brandon?
Yeah, so and I wanted to dive in a little bit too, and I didn't do this in the beginning. Of course, as I was saying before, my story deals a lot with racial issues. Coming from a interracial relationship, my father is Black and my mom is white, and so this whole comfort versus discomfort portion, I get that so much because my whole life in dealing with racial injustices and dealing with who I am as a person and dealing with trying to fit in, I was flooded with this discomfort and uncomfortability with who I am as a person. And I think as I've gotten older and I've gotten more into my field and I've gotten more into my fight for social justice and equality and equity and all of these things, I have realized over the course of time that I had to sit with myself and understand who I am and sit with the people who are malicious and sit with all of that, again, that discomfort and become comfortable with it. Now, I know you're probably thinking to yourself, how do you become comfortable with discomfort? Well, I mean, that's a great question. And I think as we go on in every stage of our life, we have to understand that no matter what happens to us, good or bad, we have to take from each situation what we can. And as it says here, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. This whole topic is, in fact, very, very uncomfortable to discuss. As a trainer and a workshop developer and doing what I do with my organization, I have to every day prepare for different workshops and trainings to meet the needs of different particular organizations. And in that, we are talking about these current events that are happening. And every day, it seems like there's more and more and more things that are kind of happening in regards to social justice and racial discrimination or sexual discrimination, so on and so forth. And so there's so many areas that we need to focus on. But again, I think it's important to understand that in order for us to progress, we need to understand that and be comfortable with these difficult topics. So this is where this whole comfort versus discomfort comes in. And it's so difficult to talk about, but with healthy dialogue, with again, maintaining our own balanced, healthy lifestyle, we can do this and we can progress and we can push the agenda to find that common ground. And I think that's where we miss is we have a difficulty finding that common ground because, again, we're not comfortable. We're not comfortable with ourselves. We're not comfortable with the topic. We're not comfortable with what's going on in the world. So I think, and we're going to get into this a little bit more. We're going to talk a little bit about active listening and talk a little bit more about dialogue and how important communication really is. So as we kind of go into the next phase here. All right. This is the emotion, part. As I said before, and you'll notice that when we were looking at our iceberg and how there are layers and how it goes deep, we look at this as an onion too, right? Onion has layers to it, and that's in regards to social justice as well. There are so many different avenues and so many different topics. I think when we think about diversity and social justice, sometimes we only solely focus on race. And while that is a big part of it, there are so many other things. There's ageism, again, sexual orientation, so many other, mental health is part of diversity, and there's so many other, so many things that we need to cut in order to understand even further. So when we get into that, we talk about unconscious and conscious, biases as well. A lot of the times there's a word that's called implicit bias, which is essentially unconscious bias. And we need to understand that we all possess those, right? So each one of us here on this call has an implicit bias or a prejudice of some sort. We just got to be real with that off rip. Like we all have that. And if we're not being honest and real with ourselves and addressing that and bringing it to the forefront, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. And so this is all about self-awareness, all of this, maintaining mental health, maintaining that balanced portion. It's about understanding who we are as people and being active listeners. And that's so hard, especially in this day and age, right? Because, excuse me one second. My dog is just tearing something up and I had to had to take care of that. So when we're talking about active listening, we are talking about, and this is an important, I think, area that we fail to comprehend. No matter what you believe, no matter the situation, if we are not listening to understand as opposed to listening to respond, then we're never going to get to the next level. Okay, so active listening is a very important piece to the puzzle, right? So, and again, no matter what side you're on, no matter how you're viewing it, we have to give people the opportunity to speak. And I think this is where our disconnect is in regards to the topic of social justice and racial injustice. If we're not giving people the opportunity to speak and hear them out, then we're doing ourselves a disservice and we're not going to get anywhere. Instead, we'll just sit here on social media and we'll be keyboard warriors and we'll argue back and forth, and it's not going to get anywhere. And I've been a part of that. I'm not sitting here saying that I haven't done this or I haven't been a part of that situation, because I have. And then I ask myself, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? And then, as we go on, we have to really, again, this all goes back and circles back to self-reflection. So, and I try to encourage this, and no matter how extreme or far to one side someone is, I do want to give someone the ample opportunity to talk. But of course, I expect that back in return. That's part of active listening. And as a therapist, when I'm in a session with someone, and Allie, I'm sure you can kind of bounce off of this as well, we have to get rid of that mental noise and be in the moment with the people that we're in session with. Because if we're not listening to them, we're going to miss something. That applies to this situation now. And that applies to our everyday lives, whether it's with our family, with our friends, in our romantic relationships, so on and so forth. It's very important, because what can happen is when we get so in our emotions and we don't listen, we miss things. And that's when impulsive behavior can occur. And I was telling, and as Allie and I were putting this together, I was thinking about examples, and I was thinking to myself, I have seen with my own eyes people who have commented on the status of someone, and they were agreeing with the person essentially on whatever topic it was that they were talking about, and that person received it differently. They thought that they were attacking them, so they began to display impulsive behaviors and attack that person. And that person was like, whoa, I'm agreeing with you. Did you read my comment? So even people we agree with, we tend to process differently because we're such in attack mode. And again, that does nothing for us. That does nothing for the mission. It does nothing for healthy communication patterns. So again, that's a self-reflective tactic that we really need. And so I want to encourage you all to think about active listening, to think about healthy communication patterns, because in order for us to do it and in order to maintain a healthy balance for ourselves, those need to be essential parts and they need to be put in our toolbox. Okay.
And just to piggyback off of Brandon, if you catch yourself experiencing getting defensive, tune into that. The self-reflection that Brandon's talking about, that's a perfect opportunity for self-reflection, right? Like, ooh, that didn't feel so good. Ooh, I don't know why I'm responding that way. And even acknowledging, like, if I'm in a conversation with Brandon and I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that. Like, something is triggered for me and I'm not sure what exactly it is. But I want you to know that I'm aware that something was just triggered, and maybe we could continue to have a conversation or have another conversation about that afterwards, after I've done that self-reflection piece. And as we go into the next stage of loss, we don't necessarily mean losses in the concept of death, but a loss of your previous sense of yourself. So as you're doing all of this self-reflection that Brandon's talking about, and you guys are committing to advocacy for social justice and things are being brought to your attention, you're educating yourself, things are gonna trigger some sort of response for you. And that's when you need to sit with it and to change that, shift from that, ooh, what is wrong with everybody? Why does that person have that view? Why is that person voting for that person? Why do they sit with that? Sit with that time, because that's when you need to shed those parts of yourself, when you acknowledge that and recognize, where did I get these biases? Where did I get these implicit biases from? I'm not even sure where they came from. I read a quote recently that I thought was pretty interesting that really encompassed this aspect of loss. Some of this loss is super deep rooted, and it takes time to dig up those roots, to untangle those roots, to figure out what's going on and where they all belong, and then repot them where they're supposed to be. And that's an opportunity for you to bridge the gap. This is where all the growth and change really takes place. But also know that you're going to make some mistakes in this area. There are going to be times where you mess up and you say the wrong thing, and maybe you quick respond to that Facebook comment that you see online. But use that as an opportunity to acknowledge your mistakes and then use them as an opportunity for growth. Brandon, you got anything else?
No, I think that's great.
Cool.
So moving forward, there's a couple of things that we want to address here too. And again, I said this earlier on, it's important to acknowledge and be aware and be real with yourself in regards to your prejudices. Also knowing your privileges. And I know that this is don't say the word privilege because we struggle. Look, I'm going to tell you this. We all possess privileges of some kind. And I know when we hear things like, we all have those privileges, and for example, as an able-bodied man, my privilege is I'm able to call ahead with certain at restaurants, and I don't have to make, arrangements because of a handicap or anything like that. What can I do with my privilege? I can advocate for those who might not have this particular privilege. Same goes with education. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I can get certain jobs that other people might not be able to get. That's a privilege that I possess, and I'm aware of that, and I can use that to my advantage. What do I do with my privilege? I'm a social advocate for racial injustices. I help veterans. I do this, I do that. So just acknowledging who we are as people, and privileges doesn't have to be this negative, bad thing. It can be positive. And if we put that into our frame of mind, it becomes a healthier concept because it doesn't become a trigger word. It's not a trigger word for me. Yes, I know I'm a minority, but it is what it is. We all possess those type of privileges. And of course, mental health in general, we have to cut that out in terms of it being a stigma. It's very interesting because I noticed that people have no problems. And again, this is preference, and it's just, whatever you feel comfortable with. But on a larger scale, it seems that people will be more comfortable saying, I have a doctor's appointment or I have a physical with my primary care physician, so on and so forth. But God forbid if they, nobody wants to talk about mental health, or if they feel like they made an appointment with a mental health provider, that I must be crazy, or I must be insane, or they're going to lock me away, or people are going to think differently of me. Look, as a therapist, as a social justice advocate, I'm here to tell you that I engage in therapy. And if I didn't engage in therapy, I would be doing myself a disservice, and I would be hypocritical of the movement. I love going to therapy. I hear people's problems every day. Right. So sometimes when I come home, I want to be able to have an opportunity in the space to talk about what I got going on. And that's healthy. And especially with, as a person of color, as a Black man, like I need that, because right now more than ever, there is so much going on in our world that I need to have that space to have that balance. And I need to practice mindfulness-based interventions. I need to practice self-care, which we're about to get into right now. And I need all of that. And so it's all about reflective behavior and recovering and recharging. Look, if I'm on the go every day and I'm doing trainings every day and I'm talking about all these issues every day and I'm not maintaining or taking care of myself, things are going to be convoluted. I'm going to have those impulsive behaviors. I'm going to get too emotional talking about these things because I've been there. I realize, oh man, today I cannot talk about racial injustices. Today I cannot do it, because if I do, I don't have the time for it. I've been to that point. I'm sure all of us can feel that way in some way, shape, or form. And it's like this. You have to be aware and maintain your own healthy space in your own environment. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I want to encourage everybody, again, to always practice that self-reflection. Always practice that, because if we're not good to ourselves, we cannot be good to the mission. We can't be good to the movement. We can't be good to the people that we serve. And so those are just things I want you to put into perspective. And again, as it says here, that's the question. Think, reflect. Are you putting as much into yourself as you are to social justice? And if you're like me, and I'm not going to try to speak for Allie, but knowing Allie, we wear our heart on our sleeves, and we want to do what we can do. And I apologize for even towing the line of speaking for you, Allie, because I don't know.
No,
But
you're good. You're right on.
You know what I mean? We wear our heart on our sleeves, and as therapists, we want to do everything that we can for other people. But sometimes we get lost in the sauce, as I like to say, and forget to take care of our own. I have a son, I have a family. Like, I have to make sure that they're good as well, because if I'm neglecting that and them and him, then what am I? So that's part of my identity, is a family man, as a father, and I have to make sure I'm fostering that. But I've also taken the role of being an advocate. So again, all about balance. How are you balancing yourselves? And so that's what we want to hone in on as well. And that's that whole part of, self-care strategies. And Allie, did you want to go ahead and improvise?
Yeah, sure.
Or, go out for that?
Yeah, sure. And those were the calls to action. We you guys are here on a Saturday night at 7 o'clock for a reason, right? So we want you to have this action orientation of what are you going to do next? And this is just 3 simple steps that Brandon just talked about, of acknowledging you're part of the problem, addressing the areas that you need to address, and then also recovering and recharging from that. And that takes time, effort, and energy to put as much into yourself, obviously, as into advocacy. And if I have any clients on the call, they definitely have heard this metaphor in my office before. For anybody who's traveled or has been on an airplane, the little flight attendant goes through his or her spiel, and says, hey, if we lose oxygen in the cabin, the oxygen masks are going to come down, and you need to put that oxygen mask on yourself before you put that on somebody else. And at first, it seems like a selfish behavior and a selfish response of like, well, if I'm traveling with a child or a family member, like, why wouldn't I want to put that mask on somebody else first? But if you don't give yourself the oxygen and you pass out, you can't help anybody else. This is the same kind of strategy that we're talking here. You need to put as much into yourself. You need to give yourself oxygen so you can be the social justice warrior that we need you to be. We need you to put as much time and effort and energy into yourself as you are to combating the societal issues that we're experiencing right now, so you can take care of yourself and other people. And we gave you a couple strategies that we want you to consider with mindfulness, like Brandon has just talked about, being mindful of where you're at, being mindful of how much energy you can give to social justice per any day, because that could change daily. Being willing to self-reflect, engaging in therapy. Brandon talks so highly of therapy. I couldn't be happier that I go into therapy. I do it once every 2 weeks for myself. Like Brandon talked about, our clients don't come to us because they're excited, right? Or they're happy and they have this wonderful news to share with us. They come and talk to us about some really heavy stuff. And the students that come to us and see us here in the counseling center talk about really challenging experiences that they face. And it's our job as therapists to help our clients to see some hope and to see some opportunity for success in the future. And that last bullet point couldn't be more important, especially when fighting for social justice, is building up your support system. Making sure that you have friends and family and colleagues and people that you can lean on whenever you are just exhausted. Who's filling your cup? What is filling your cup? Self-care can come in a variety of different ways, and taking care of yourself can look different for everybody. But being willing to reach out to, if I need Brandon, I'm going to reach out to Brandon, and being able to reach out to my friends and family, this is such an important and a vital part of this process. It's not always being on the picket line. It's not always responding back on social media. It is about taking care of yourself and having healthy, meaningful conversations with people to provoke real change. Brandon?
No, I think that was beautifully said, Allie. Again, self-care is the best care. And I think just to wrap that up, again, I love the airplane analogy. Again, we can't help anybody else for not helping ourselves. And I think that's a big bullet point. And being in the mix and being at the forefront, I can tell you that I know burnout. I know what that is. I know what that feels like. And every day I try to remind myself that, okay, Brandon, are you giving yourself enough time? And this is everything that's going on in the world right now. It's a lot, you know, and for me personally, I think about my son and how I want to create and make a better world for him. I know I can't do it by myself. And I'm not trying to sit here and say I'm the sole person that's going to change the world. This is a collective effort.
Mhm.
And I think I want to highlight that for everybody that's on the call, that we all need to be a part of this. Because if we are not cohesively working towards these goals, then again, we're selling ourselves short. And it takes a village to do these things. It takes cohesive strategies to make things work. With my organization, I can't do all that by myself. I have a great team who helps me. I have great people such as Ali, who is a great ally and who understands. And that's what I want to encourage for people. And reach out to people. You know, talk about these things. People that you trust, reach out. You know, begin to feel comfortable. Because if you continue to hold everything in, what happens when you start pouring over a cup and it just continues to overflow? That's how our emotions are. If we just pouring and pouring and pouring, it's going to overflow. We need to be able to extract it. We need to be able to get it out. And I think that's important. So in our continuous fight for social justice, remember that one of the most core and most important things is this concept right here of self-care.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. We would like to open this up for some questions. Jade?
Sorry. I see it's in the chat. So Elaine Martin, sorry if I said your name wrong. She said, this is all wonderful. Are there any principles you need to bear in mind that are different when you're trying to challenge the comfort zone with the person who is in a position of power over you, whether at work or in law enforcement, for example, versus to a peer or a colleague?
A great question. You're trying to challenge the person. I think, you know, Brandon, I'm going to just start off here. You jump in whenever you want. I think kind of going back to that, creating that safe space is really important in this kind of question, especially whenever you're trying to talk to somebody who's in a position of power or authority, like a boss or a colleague or something like that, and creating that safe space. And maybe not initially like responding right away to whatever the person is saying to you, but maybe taking that time to really sit with what are their views, and asking clarifying questions. You can totally ask questions of like, for example, if Brandon and I are in a conversation, I'm not necessarily agreeing with him. Hey, Brandon, could you elaborate a little bit more on that? I'm just trying to understand more fully what you're trying to say, because I'm not sure our viewpoints align. And that's okay too. But just acknowledging that different opinions are important and okay, as long as we're being respectful and hearing each other's side of the story.
Absolutely. And again, to piggyback off of that, I think that's a great point. In both of my, my jobs, obviously with Open Eyes, I'm the executive director there. So as the executive director of that organization, transparency is key. In my other job, I do have a supervisor, and thankfully we have great support with our supervisor and great communication. I've been in positions before where, it hasn't been as transparent, but I'm the type of person, and I think this is, let's go back for a moment to the comfort versus discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we need to be comfortable with being heard respectfully, and we need to create that environment. Sometimes I feel like we wait for other people to try to create that, and we just simply can't do that. We have to sometimes be that initiator and say, hey, I'm a warm and welcoming person, and I'm very transparent. And there's ways to go about that. There are healthier approaches. And I think sometimes, again, we have to maintain that healthy balance for ourselves and understand that, again, If you're in a work environment and there's something that you feel like you need to get out there, you should feel comfortable. And again, I'm not saying you always do, because I've experienced that. I've been in situations where I've not felt comfortable telling someone who might be in a position of power over me about how I feel. And I've had to really battle with that. But I've also, it was trial and error. At some point, I had to be like, you know what? Screw it. I gotta talk about it. You know, I have to approach this person and tell them how I really feel respectfully. And we can do that. And hopefully that person would be, receive that well. And if you address it accordingly, I do believe that there are great things that could come from it. And, for me, as a leader in an organization, I encourage people to come to me with things. I encourage that. And again, because I want that. I want people to feel comfortable. I want that environment, that safe space to occur. So I would say sometimes you just gotta actually, if there's things that you feel like need to be addressed, reflect, think about how to address it appropriately, how to address it in a healthy way, and create that open space and that healthy dialogue. So that's my input on that. It's a great question.
It's a great question.
When in a heated conversation, do you have any tips on how to de-escalate the situation?
Another great one.
Allie, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Definitely. And that's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to have conversations that become heated, to a sense, especially if it's with a friend or a family member. But we would really encourage you that's when you need to take a break, potentially, of stopping the conversation, be like, listen, this is no longer productive, I think, on either end of our discussion here. And I want to hear your side. I want you to hear my side, but we might need to take a step back and take a break from this. But let's readdress this whenever we've all calmed down. And making sure that you do loop back around and come full circle to have that conversation with somebody, even if it does get uncomfortably heated at first, especially over the internet, maybe reaching out to them and asking if they can have a conversation with you separately. But maybe taking some time before you start to damage the relationship you have with that individual, whether that be a colleague, a friend, a family member, you want to make sure that you're being mindful of, okay, what is being provoked for me, and what are the emotions that I'm experiencing right now? And that's where the self-reflection piece comes in. But once the conversation gets to the point where it's super heated and people are just spewing fire with their words, it's no longer productive. And that might be an opportunity for you to foster those conversations with friends and family outside of who you were talking with, to be like, how would you help? Like, how can I have a more productive conversation with this individual?
Beautifully said, Allie. I completely agree. And I gotta give an example. I have a friend right now currently that him and I, he's my childhood friend. I consider him a brother, but we have completely different views on things. And we have gotten into some conversations that I'm like, dude, I have to take a break from you. And vice versa. Same thing with me.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I have to check myself. I don't want to sit here and say that, I'm the all-knowing, all-guru of diversity topics of blah, blah, blah. There's a lot that I need to learn. And I realize that I need to be challenged by other people. Like, I need to. That's, in order for me to grow and to elevate and to take things to the next level, I need to be challenged. And so I welcome those conversations. I hate social media debates personally, because I feel like everything, and I used this term before, again, lost in the sauce. I feel like content gets lost, even with text messages. So anytime I have an opportunity to talk to somebody face to face, I welcome that, because I'm all about nonverbals. I'm all about seeing emotion and feeling passion. I think that's the best. And to be honest with you, I have another friend who, and I in self-disclosure, I have a belief in a higher power. I'm very universal in that sense, but this friend of mine is atheist, and him and I, and this is crazy to say, him and I have the best, and what's going to sound crazy, it's not crazy to me anymore. him and I have the best spiritual conversation. You're probably thinking to yourself, how the hell does that happen? Well, I had to ask myself that question too. Like, how is it that I am able to have these deep conversations spiritually with someone who has a complete opposite belief system? It's because we're different, and there's beauty in differences. And we don't think about that because, again, we're so set in our ways, and we just want to be right, and we want our belief system to be our belief system. And anybody who opposes that, we're against it. We got to stop all that, because that's getting us nowhere. It's getting us nowhere. And my friend, and I'm blessed and thankful to have him, and for him and I, we come together and we talk. And you know what our commonality is? Peace, being virtuous, morale, treating other people with respect. That's where we meet in the middle. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I welcome that so much, because it makes me a better person. It's not him and I trying to get him on my side. I express what I believe, he expresses what he believes, but it's never in the means of trying to force me, or if I say, I have a belief system and you don't, you're wrong. We don't get to that point. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful conversation. It's part of active listening. Even though, and again, as Ali was saying in the beginning, though, sometimes with some people, you can't even get to that point, and you just have to bow out. And you're like, you know what? We gotta stop this, because we're not getting anywhere. And I have been trying to focus on doing that a lot more often with people I get into an exchange with on social media. I'm like, you know what? Hey, why don't we have a Zoom call? Why don't we you and I just talk? We don't have to put on a show for the whole social media to comment on. It could just be you and I. I feel like if we started doing that, that cuts out a lot. And when we're able to have these conversations face to face, it changes the dynamic a little bit. Because again, I feel like we get too comfortable on social media, and we get too comfortable shooting texts to one another about how we feel about these significant issues. And so I for myself, and again, I'm not sitting here saying that I'm perfect or I've never engaged in a debate or have a heated discussion with someone. I have, and I have to remind myself that that's not getting anywhere. I want to create a space that everybody can be heard, but at the same time, we're having a healthy, respectful conversation. As soon as it turns left, and that has turned left for me a lot, I need to bow out. I've posted statuses on Facebook before, and things had gotten too personal, and I've removed the whole status. And I was involved in it, and I had to take a step back and say, you know what, I got to remove this status because it's not doing anything for the movement. It's not doing anything for the cause. And that's just a reflection. And I don't want to get caught up in that. And it's so easy for us to do that, especially during the political climate. And I think we need to, again, this is all part of mindfulness-based practice, self-reflection, and awareness. So you have to check yourself, because you could be out of pocket too. You know what I mean? Like, you can be doing things that are not appropriate. You can be answering and responding off of emotion and not critical thinking. So we have to hold ourselves accountable as well as everybody else does.
I just want to piggyback off of Brandon really quickly before the next question of, like, it's taken us a long time to get to this point too, where Brandon and I are able to give you these tips and feedback and advice on how to have these conversations, because I mean, I don't want to speak for Brandon, but I was not perfect at this, especially when I was younger. And especially with this new age social media, and it's so easy to respond to somebody without having to look at them face to face, like Brandon was talking about. It takes a long time, and it takes some real intentional effort and work on yourself to be able to reflect on, man, I just don't want to act like that anymore. Or, oh man, I don't want to burn this bridge, or I really value this person's relationship. And yeah, they have different opinions than me. But how can I make this relationship work, even if we do have different opinions? And always be mindful of how much effort and energy that you're giving the cause and giving to people that don't fill up your cup. And yes, it's important to challenge yourself to have those conversations. But like Brandon said, it's so important to know when to bow out.
Thank you both. So we're going to do a last call for questions. If anybody has any questions, I'll give you a moment to type it in. Just maybe a minute. If not, Jade, oh, you have something else to add?
We will, we'll put our emails, Brandon, if you want to toss your email in the chat as well. So if you guys have any questions that you don't feel comfortable asking in front of a panel today, please don't hesitate to shoot an email to Brandon or I, and we would happily schedule a Zoom call or face-to-face if you're comfortable with that, in addition to answering any questions you may have via email. So if you'd like to, please shoot us an email. We're happy to continue this conversation far beyond tonight's event.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allie.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, Brandon and Allie, for your presentation and advice about maintaining our mental health while fighting for causes that are important to all of us. The Black Student Union will be planning future events with the Alumni Association, so please watch out for emails and any notifications about those in the future.
Thank you, Jade. And thank you, Allie and Brandon, for having this conversation with us this evening. Our hope tonight is that each of you have comfort in knowing that you are not alone in the fight for social justice. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And we have one more event tonight. It's pretty big prizes at late night bingo at 10 p.m. So if you haven't registered, the registration is still open at gannonalumni.org. And we hope to see you this weekend at Mass tomorrow or yoga in the morning. And we will definitely continue this conversation in the future. So check your emails for more information to come. So thank you for joining, Gannon family. Have a nice evening.